Hello and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's session on, sorting out my sound there, on next generation eCall. My name is Ciaran Moynihan and I work for Ireland's Stage 1 PSAP. I'm also a member of EENA's Technical and Operations Committee, which is probably why I'm standing up here as opposed to sitting down there as usual. So, eCall, next generation eCall. Any of you who are involved with PSAPs will have seen the growth in eCall and eCalls generated from vehicles over the last 3 years or so. And we'll have seen the value that the additional data brings to an emergency call. What we're also aware of is that the standards that eCall is based on and the standards that it uses, they were first developed and envisaged over 10 years ago. And in the meantime, communications technology has evolved, it's moved on, and we're now facing a situation where the technologies that eCall relies upon is being phased out, or is due to be phased out, in favor of faster, more versatile IP-based communications. So where does that leave eCall, and what's the future for automated emergency calling from vehicles? So we'll hear today from our speakers, Luca and Anna, on how next generation eCall will work, how we'll get there, and some of the work that's been done on the standards and interoperability testing that is key to realizing a future-proofed eCall solution for us all. So with that, I'll hand over to Luca for the first presentation.
Thank you, Ciaran, for the introduction. Welcome to this presentation, and let me say, first of all, it's a pleasure to see all of you here after the forced break that we all had. My first trip in 1.5 years. It's quite unusual. And today we are talking about next generation eCall. The introduction made by Ciaran already says something of the things I wanted to introduce. First of all, we all know what is eCall. So this is a typical slide of reminder of the elements that it touches. A car has a car crash, it's geolocated, it pushes a call back to the contact center, who is now able to locate the car and, let's say, take the proper operations, dispatch vehicles and so on for the rescue. Now, what happens when and if these kind of technologies will disappear? And this is not going to happen in 10 years or 20 years. This is happening now. This presentation actually was due to be presented last year, so I took some, let's say, some phrases, some statements from a mobile network operator, and you can read who's there by looking at the link over there. They said, at the end of 2020, we will switch off 2G mobile technology, which unfortunately is the technology on which eCall is based. So what happens when they switch it off, and what's gonna happen with the eCall later? What happens when 2G will be out of service and, let me say, 5G will take its place or will become the most popular network? We are going from GSM communications to voice over IP communications in general, no? And of course, among the voice over IP communications that will provide a wider range of capabilities also for emergency services, we include also the next generation eCall. I don't want to go too much into technical details, but it's important to have at least an understanding of the NG112 framework. The morning presentation was one of the best ways to have it if you are not familiar with the ideas yet. But in general, let's again give a short summary. So next generation architecture can be represented very high level with this slide. We have PSAPs on the right-hand side, and then we have the infrastructure in the middle. You can recognize some names. So we have the over-the-top services. We have the voice-over LTE services and the legacy networks, which, let me say, are current networks, no, from our understanding. And then in the middle, we have this orange cloud called ESINet, Emergency Service IP Network, which is going to be, let me say, the core of the NG112 infrastructure. Let's not focus on the small boxes. These, let me say, are all elements of the network which are ruled by standard, but anyway, the composition of an NG112 architecture typically is made of these elements. So where is the eCall going through, or next generation eCall going through? If we imagine a next generation eCall as a voice over IP service, it's going through this arrow, through a voice over LTE infrastructure, directly to the PSAP through the ESINet. And again, if you're familiar with voice over IP things, you may recognize SIP headers like this. Now, this is the typical SIP header, I would say, the way you initiate a voice over IP call. There is an invite message, there are a few fields, but what is interesting for us is the composition, no, of the element and how this will impact on ngecole. So we have this part, we have the payload, let me say, which is saying in principle what kind of media you're sharing, the way you are sharing the media between the peers that are talking. But this is typical, no? It's existing since several years. Next generation 112 includes a new part, which is dedicated to location. So that means an NG112 call will be able to locate the caller automatically without the usage of network-based location or any other external means. A huge improvement. But this is not enough. ngecole will probably have even more. Not just geolocation, but what we know as the MSD information. And keep in mind, they even speak about the same kind of PER encoding that we are used to have right now. So this is going to change completely the way we are referring to calls in general and e-calls in particular. When you will be able to place a call based on IP services that contains in one single message all the information you require, you will be capable of expanding this let's say, payload or the capabilities, in this case, of emergency services beyond the current infrastructures, beyond the current services you have. And keep in mind, I didn't invent any of these things you see on the screen. This is not my opinion. This is taken by official documents, which are already describing a possible way to which we should be moving when talking about next generation eCall. So moving away from GSM, moving away potentially from the current technologies, and moving to voice over IP communications, including also eCall. When this is happening, like I said, the example before of Swisscom is very interesting because it gives us a short time frame. We are not going to wait too long before other countries and other mobile network operators are going to switch their technology. I also prepared a few self-made questions. What about my eCall modem? So if you are a PSAP or if you are a public agency and you bought your technology to handle eCall a few years ago to comply with the European directive, do you have to throw away your things? Well, not exactly. Not exactly. There are at least 3 reasons why you should still keep your technology, maybe just do a small improvement, but potentially, first of all, most of SIP modems, most of eCall modems can read SIP. Some of them may require an update, but in general, they should be already compliant with SIP or voice over IP communications. The second reason is, let's keep in mind there is going to be a transitional period. It's not like we switch on an NG112 network overnight. That's why there is this gray cloud called legacy networks. We are talking about a way to interact with old technologies, GSM, in other words, and similar, to the new ESI net architecture that we see in this picture. So in this transitional period, when you will get your eCalls in the traditional way, MST will be transported in the usual way. Therefore, eCall modems will still play an important role in the design. And let me say, even if there is, the transitional period will be over, there will be still space for the eCall modems, so your investment is safe for some time, because there may be a fallback situation. If a normal next generation eCall would provide you the data inside the typical SIP message, SIP invite, and so on, there might be situations where this is not available, and the eCall modem, or actually the IVS or equivalent of IVS that will be provided in the future, will need to place the information in the traditional way through in-band encoding. So again, your modems, your investments are not wasted, even if we are going through a period of transition, or technological transition. I hope this gave you an overview of what we are waiting for in the next few years. And we still have a lot of time, so it's time for questions. Feel free to ask whatever you want, or what you want to drill down from the things you've seen before. Any questions? We have questions here.
You talked about a fallback situation. Mm-hmm. Is that fallback situation situated from the in-vehicle system, or is there also a fallback situation possible from the PSAP part?
I would say both of them. There are situations where you simply are waiting for an MSD to be delivered, and eventually you don't see it, so you ask yourself what's going on. Mm-hmm. Right now, for example, modems, by standard, they must have the capability of asking for an MSD. And the typical way of doing it is through in-band communication with the IVS device. So in this typical situation, even in the next generation phase, your modem would be able to in-band discuss with the IVS for a new MSD resend. So let me say, if you are an operator, if you are a call taker, and you don't see data, the first thing you want to do is find a way to retrieve what's missing. And then you ask why it failed. No? In an emergency situation, you go directly to the answer, and then you look for the causes.
Okay. Thank you.
In principle, yeah. There was a question in the back.
Hi, Brandon Abley with NENA. Are you envisioning that the LNG would interwork the call like into an NG eCall after ingesting a legacy eCall?
Sorry, can you?
Does that make sense? So are you envisioning that you have an LNG in your diagram, the legacy network gateway? Are you envisioning that would like construct an NG eCall after receiving the call, or does it just like pass that through into the ESINet?
Well, right now what happens is that this is a real situation. I mean, so we are not speculating. The situation is that you may have an IVS, so the in-vehicle system that generates an eCall, and it does it on GSM necessarily. And once the dialogue with the other end is established, the MSD is let's say, sent over the network in band. No? So it works like a fax, right? Mm-hmm. Officially, you can translate a regular, let me say, PSTN, GSM, ISDN communication into SIP and then the proper payload. Otherwise, all the PSAPs that have SIP-based PABXs wouldn't be able to effectively receive an eCall. So right now, my expectation is that the legacy network gateway does exactly that. So it can, translate the call into SIP and the proper whatever payload G729 or whatever you are negotiating, keeping the data in the modulation properly. I know the transition is not simple, but eCall vendors, eCall modem vendors, they guarantee this works. So I trust them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question on this side? On this side? Is Ciaran on with the microphone?
Am I on now? Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm on. I'm just wondering about the sort of end-to-end implementation and what will be required of the network providers, the mobile network operators, and what work is required on their part, and what moves are being made to, or is anything being done at a regulatory level to make sure that the mobile network operators can support NG eCall when it becomes a reality?
Yeah, good question. So my opinion is that this depends on the current acceptance of the SIP protocol within mobile network operators. I guess the transition will be similar to what happened with the famous eCall flag, right? So eCall flag, for those who wonder what it is, it's basically a part of the GSM signaling where you had to include a bit that said this is an eCall. And then there were other bits, but let's forget about it. So mobile network operators had to deal with the same situation. They were forced somehow to adopt the presence of this bit, treat it correctly, and forward it to the rest of the network elements. So I'm afraid this is similar to that. So treating the payload a specific type, making sure the size is fine and it's accepted by all the network elements and not cut off and so on, will require some investments, I guess, and will also require commitment from the authorities to say, okay, this has to be done this way, that way, etc., etc. The only thing which I like from this situation versus the old one is that, to be honest, right now we can say that nobody was thinking when eCall was implemented that between GSM and the PSAP there is another important element which is landline phones. And the passage from GSM to landline did not think about the transportation of the eCall flag. Therefore, many mobile network operators had to invent a way to pass on this information to make sure that it arrived to the PSAP, because PSAPs are not connected with GSM network directly. Here we don't have this issue because SIP is SIP for mobile and fixed. It's voice over IP after all. So probably it would be even a better engagement from the network operator perspective. They all work in the same direction. There is one thing to implement, if you want, for all of them. So I hope it goes smoother than it used to be.
Me too.
Please, there is a question here.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to ask, are all the standards necessary for implementing eCall, next generation eCall, already published and ready for the work?
So let me say, we have these currently. My knowledge is that we have these two documents that refer the way you implement eCall, but this information may be a little bit old. Maybe there is some improvement, Christina. I don't know. There are. Okay. Can you please give the microphone to Christina? She's here on the front.
There will be an update of this document.
Okay. Jan, consider that we think of ngecole as a sub-part of NG112. So thinking about the implementation of ngecole might be part of your transition to NG112. And for that, the standards are already published. ETSI published a TS document, which is going to become TR. Christina, is it correct? The TS document from ETSI is gonna become something else, or is it enough what we have?
Do you mean if it will be a harmonized standard?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, it's a technological standard, no? So you could say, you know, I'm following the rules and everything goes as expected and so on. But this is something, and another thing is to see with your own telecommunication regulator what's their plans, with the network operators, what do they think about it, who's gonna, in the end, be the owner of that, and so on. But of course, the standard, for that, the standards are already there, or at least on the European side. Any other question? We have 2 minutes. This side? No? No? Okay, I think that's it.
I think my watch is fast anyway. I thought we were on time. So, yeah, I think we'll hand over to, thank you, Luca, for that. And we'll hand over to Anna now for the next presentation.
Could you please? All right. I would start with my presentation, and thanks for the previous speaker. I have, let's say, some already deep introduction of next generation eCall. But I would like to point out, okay, say hello to 2G and say welcome to 5G is one of the driving force for the ngecole, definitely. But also the aim of the European Union is to cut the road deaths and the serious injuries by 50% during the period 2020 and 2030. And this is also, let's say, an objective which could be fulfilled by eCall and ngecole. One, in this broader scope, I could say that the plug test events are of high importance. Last year, it was the first next-gen eCall plug test, and I would speak a little bit about the scope, setup, and results and lessons learned. And the next year will be the next one, and I will give you some information about the standards revisions included in the test scope, so you will maybe, I do hope, have a deeper insight of the status of the specifications and test interoperability test specifications, and about planned scope and setup of the event. Last year, the first next-gen eCall plug test has been conducted in November. It was organized by ETSI and supported by the European Commission, ETSI, a technical committee, mobile services group, then by SAFE 112 project, and by EFTA and EENA. It was hosted by Sintesio, the first ETSI-endorsed interoperability test site, and with Iskratel as the technical partner. I work for Iskratel, so I have been also involved in this event. About the scope of the plug tests, the event served practically two main purposes. First was to validate the consistency, clearness, and unambiguity of the ngecole technical standards, and also to prove the vendors, their components in the end-to-end interoperability testing, meaning NG-IVS devices, then of course mobile networks part, then then IMS telecom core, and a PSAP part. The ngecole plus the plug test enabled vendors to run test sessions based on interoperability test specifications, which were available at that time. It is ETSI technical standard 13683, which incorporates the basic standards from technical standards from CEN, ETSI, and IETF. Due to COVID-19 epidemic lockdown and travel restrictions, this plug test was organized in completely digital format. So therefore, we had some simple test network configuration without 2G, 3G, 4G mobile radio access network and a mobile EPC, meaning EPC core. This also narrowed the test execution scope defined by the standard I mentioned before. So no execution of test scenarios that check procedures of IVS to disattachment check and registration procedures to, of course, to 2G or 4G network, and no execution of test scenarios with circuit switch to circuit switch fallback, meaning from 4G to 2G network, because NextGen incorporates the both on IVS and on PSAP side, meaning you have to have support for 4G, meaning this IP-based communication, and also for 2G communication. And those migration scenarios, which we discussed before, are very much related with these combinations which you have, and you overcome those with either legacy network gateways or PSAP network gateways on one or on the another side. There were two, the setup environment, what we tested. There were two IVSs directly connected via IP address, but without the mobile part. And there were four PSAPs which were connected via virtual private network. And virtual IMS network has all the capabilities which are necessary to conduct next-gen eCall, meaning emergency capabilities with the emergency CSCF functionality and eCall capabilities, meaning the next-gen is still voice call. About the setup and this pre-testing period, first we planned 2 weeks period, but after we decided to prolong this for 1 week because some, let's say, difficulties which arose during this, let's say, setting up all the connectivities and also the calls that all the tests after went smoothly through. Plug test itself was held and was take place for 1 week. And there were total 8 sessions, meaning each IVS with each PSAP. After the plug tests, there were for 2 weeks this extension period that also the safe project partners could test their specifics and specific specifications which were done during this project. About the test scope, 12 out of 14 basic test scenarios from the test specification document 103683 were conducted, meaning test scope was manual eCall, then automatic eCall, MSD transfer, callback, then MSD update, PSAP release, and verification of audio interfaces. And 11 advanced test scenarios were also conducted, meaning and executed. In these scenarios, we checked only IVS or only PSAP or the both sides. Altogether, there were 23 different scenario types. About the results, you could see the results for 8 sessions. Results per session was, there was minimum 8 runs and maximum 23 runs, in average 15. And the results per test groups, we executed altogether exactly 100 executions. Of those 23 IVS PSAP end-to-end test scenarios I mentioned before, and the average success rate was 76%. Some issues which were found during this event, let's say wrong connection to public IP address or universal resource name was reported to the participants. Then wrong SIP header values, wrong session description protocol values, then wrong message body calculation, meaning incorporating MSD and SDP, and therefore there was also a lot of adaptations needed in virtual IMS setup to individual requirements that also could test some specifics. There were 2 special, let's say, issues reported also to the standardization organizations, and that our initial message in white was not recognized or correctly received at PSAP site, and acknowledge in this 200 OK message was not forwarded to PSAP, meaning the problem here was that acknowledge request line should be the same as in the invite message. More you could see about the black test results and everything, this what's going on, you could see in the document provided by ETSI. About the lessons learned, it took some effort, really, to remotely configure this test infrastructure. I mentioned this prolongation for 1 week. Then lessons learned from this was to really, that collaboration, because this is end-to-end interoperability test, that collaboration between IVSs, IMSs, PSAPs, and testing network experts is a key success for such event, with a lot of additional equipment needed for deeper insight in those messages and all the infrastructure. But once the first eCall was successfully established, relatively high rate of successful test execution was achieved, so meaning this pre-testing period is a very important part, that you at least one eCall, next-gen eCall provide in the preparatory phase. Results and issues we reported to the standardization organizations, CEN and ETSI. About the next test fest, which will be conducted during next year, either in spring or in autumn. Here you have the status of the technical standards. Definitely the new draft of new version of technical standard interoperability test specifications TS103-683 will be available in spring 2022, and they are based on two sense standards regarding the MSD version 3, now is MSD version 2 take place. This second standard covers different vehicle categories, not just M1 and N1. Then you have the technical standard in conjunction with network independent access to emergency services. Then there are two additional sense standards, new release of ngecole base specifications and conformance tests. And of course, also the inputs from the first next-gen eCall plug test are incorporated in this new draft, which will be available, as I said, in spring 2022. About the scope of the second event, there will be interoperability tests executed for NG, IVS, NGP subsessions, meaning everything will be then included, again, end-to-end. Then conformance tests against this platform, but it's still under the question, these performance tests and audio acoustic tests, because for those tests, the equipment is needed on site. About how the event as such is organized, it will be on-site event, IVSs will be on-site. I do hope the situation, let's say, will be better, and we could really organize on-site event with the 4G network available, meaning eNode BIS and APC will be there. Virtual IMS as well, as it was in the first one, and PSAPs could be connected either directly or remotely. So about the next steps, questionnaire about scope and timing will be sent out by ETSI. Expect this invitation to potentially participants to collect willingness of vendors and to participate, and also to announce the readiness of the next-gen IVS devices and PSAPs implementations that are in line with the proposed test scope. And about the co-author of this presentation, I'm here the presenter. I know a little bit about this, but anyway, Ciaran Pinter is technical and standardization expert in Sintesio. And please contact Denis Filato, technical expert in ETSI, regarding the questions related to ngecole plug tests. So this is all from my side. Please, if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer them. So
I think perhaps not any of the questions that I had, Anna. You answered them.
Yeah, I tried to answer some questions from from
I was curious
previous session as well. So, but bear in mind that really ngecole is not just for, let's say, a packet switch thing, but the fallback to 2G should be also supported in IVS and in PSAP. And you have this, let's say, today was very nicely presented, SINet elements, which could help in, let's say, overcome those things, let's say, on the network side and on the PSAP side. Please, I was...
Good afternoon. You mentioned network independence access to emergency service. What does that entail, or what does that encompass?
Yeah, if you have those elements which are, let's say, in between originated network and PSAPs, you could then overcome those restrictions, because these gateways could help you to overcome technology. Let's say if I answer from, let's say, Iskratel point of view, in Slovenia, when we introduced this eCall functionality, we already provided some legacy network gateway, which is in fact the overcoming this 2G technology invent and going to the SIP or packet switch world. So this is what I meant by this. But there is a very nice ETSI standard, so I think you could also look into this standard, and you will have deeper insight about this.
Any more from the floor?
Any more questions?
We'll move on to Anna's next presentation. You're getting a double pass today.
So my next, please. My next presentation is on behalf of technical coordinator of the SAFE project. This is Aftermarket, eCall for Europe. We, Iskratel, were the partners, beneficiaries in this project, but most of the presentation has been prepared by colleagues and other partners in the project. So the aim of this project is defining standards and specifications to pave the way for development of aftermarket systems for eCall. So aftermarket eCall is the installation or and/or use of an European 112 eCall system into a vehicle after the first use of the vehicle, meaning not installed by the manufacturer, but after. So objectives of this project are as following: identify minimum performance and conformance requirements for aftermarket 112 eCall systems and devices. There is, let's say, could be a problem of overloading the PSAP with an inappropriate or false calls. So therefore, it's very important that we have here also technical standards that we have covered, also the conformity assessment tests and everything, like in standard eCall, or let's say farther on in next-gen eCall. So here in this project, we are dealing with the necessary variants of aftermarket eCall systems for other, let's say, vehicle categories. Of course, this project is very much in conjunction with also to provide, in conjunction with providing the inputs for the standardization organizations, and one of the objectives is also to build up an organization structure to connect relevant equal stakeholders for future development and standardization activities. Program is a Connected Europe Facility, transport sector. The contractor partner is SAINIA, project coordinator EECON, product and services. We are 23 partners. The project starts the 1st of January 2019. You could find more information on the SAFE website. First, we started with the problem analysis, with the identification of market requirements, then equal support over IMS. In this document, Iskratel was leading this. We provide all the migration scenarios from, let's say, 2G to 4G, from circuit switch to packet switch environment. Then we have cost-benefit analysis, security and privacy impact analysis, deployment of retrofit, eCall into member states, so meaning existing eCall, and influence of retrofit to requirements and requirements to PSAP. What has been done? First, definitions and specifications. We reviewed the current standards for M1 and N1 and standard eCall, and to adapt this to aftermarket aftermarket eCall. Then the partners provide incident accident analysis on vehicle, on buses, coaches, and heavy good vehicles. The inputs to the standardization organizations were created, and of course also NG112 eCall sensing and communication requirements have been provided, and new vehicle categories and technologies have been introduced. About the aftermarket eCall for powered 2, 3, 4-wheelers, they also make the inputs for the standardization organization SEN, working group 15, but first they reviewed the O&M fitted motorcycle eCall in order to have these inputs for their, let's say, requirements which they provide as the deliverable. The next step is, of course, to finalize the standardization document for standardization. So about buses and coaches, what are here challenges? Their data are quite different to gather. Let's say there are no airbags or any, let's say, good mechanisms how to provide the triggering functions. There are a wide variety of vehicle, let's say, available, or all ages and types. What is here really challenging is accurate passenger numbers, which are up to date all the time. And there are some injuries happening in the rural environment where you have lack of communication, or let's say very little communication. Opportunities are, of course, MSD to be to incorporate also the up-to-date number of accurate and up-to-date number of about the passengers. And of course, to have the possibility or to explore the ability to link also other data sources which are available in such vehicle categories, and to explore and utilize also new networks like 5G. About large good vehicles, here you have similar problems, but different regarding the cargo and load, because here are important those information how the heavy good vehicles are loaded. We have some, let's say, this electronic notes about this cargo information, but definitely this could be also sensitive information. Let's say also the information relating to dangerous goods. So opportunities are the same, how to include this into next-gen eCall, this, let's say, quite rich information. Then you have forestry, agriculture, and plants. Here you have challenges because EU data relating to incidents involving these types of vehicle are limited. There is no universal or unique format how to get this data out of the vehicles. And you have, of course, the opportunities also, let's say, for other sectors, for example, for mining, they mention here, and key market area for early adaptation for aftermarket eCall has been identified as agriculture and forestry vehicles. And of course, the lack of communication in such situations, let's say satellite and other communication types could be explored here. So about the ngecole, here you could see that let's say the stages of the incident can be prolonged, so you could also forward this information to emergency response organizations or any other inquiry, let's say, candidates who will like to have this information in order to react as fast as possible. About the challenges, I mentioned before this IVS PSAP adaptations. Then regarding the IVSs, how you integrate hardware and various hardware parts in IVS. Then about communications, IMS and 5G, and also satellite communication. And about data integration and exchange, you could have here the larger value chain where you could share this data with other, let's say, stakeholders as well. Future networks, you have here the opportunities with 5G network, satellite network, and also, let's say, IoT networks and platforms, because practically eCall was the first regulated IoT service in Europe. Then you could have, you could improve emergency response I mentioned before, with additional, let's say, data in the MSDs, or improve stakeholder responses. Let's say you could include additional stakeholders, road transport authorities, medical centers, and others. Conformity activities in the project, the conformity and test regime was extended for other vehicle types, so there is the possibility to provide the conformity assessment after, if you have a certified conformity schema in Europe. Newly developed standards have been tested all over Europe in several European member states. In Cyprus, Aftermarket eCall M1 and N1 was tested together with buses. In Slovenia, I mentioned what we've done. Germany, M1 and N1, let's say, testing cross-border assessment together with Czech Republic. In Finland, they tested the interoperability with ERA GLONASS. In Italy, they validated equipment developed for the power of 2, 3, 4-wheelers. And in Portugal, aftermarket validation for M1 and N1 was provided. The validation of the member states required also here much more effort than expected because of COVID-19. Therefore, the project has been prolonged for 1 year and now being successfully completed at the end of this year. What has been done? Extensions to the standards for additional vehicle types, the necessary adjustment for the PSAPs, the possible uses of eCall NG, conformity standards were adopted, tests in several EU countries have been carried out successfully. Then a project was presented, this dissemination work, several times at congresses and trade fairs, and all deliverables are available on the SAFE website. So all deliverables are public, so you could reach them via this website. What is still missing? Standard and extensions have to be finalized by the CEN and ETSI. There is no commercially available devices, so industrial support for aftermarket devices has yet to be also established. And there is additional topics and materials for the Hero Free project together with eCall NG. The mobile phone providers have to be involved too. What will happen with eCall after the SAFE project? My colleagues ask themselves together with me the following questions. What about vehicle types built before the 1st of April 2018, when the eCall was mandatory? What about areas not covered by 2G, 3G or 4G, now also 5G? What about connected vehicles, meaning vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to pedestrian, and all these possibilities which are here with the autonomous driving? What about next-gen 112 eCall? What about eCall interoperability for trucks, buses, and coaches, agriculture and forestry vehicles, and maybe other which will come? What about compliance and performance measurement for PSAPs? And what about the challenges of the eCall aftermarket? The statement is there are a number of, let's say, organizations, associations representing part of this eCall chain, meaning GSMA, EENA, ICEA, but no organization really has a global overview of the eCall value chain. The idea which came out during this project is really to enhance the eCall community and work continuously on the future requirements and challenges of eCall or ngecole. To reach this really goal, ITS Mobility organized several workshops to involve the whole eCall community and to address all relevant needs. This overall vision is to develop an all-inclusive association to enhance the cooperation between the stakeholders in order to achieve these, let's say, ambitious goals in the European Union. And you could see here there were 3 workshops conducted in the 2020, one call for expression of interest, to join processes to finalize key documents, and the event eCall Days on 14th and 15th of October was organized. Identified challenges to work on. There are 7, let's say, topics, 70-digit number dial to IVS, false calls from IVS, 2G, 3G sunset, and NG112 eCall, data transmission between actors, unified method of testing for O&M, last to known location supplied, wrong MSD data, and access to EU carries. Warmly welcome to this association to become a member. You could find more information on its homepage. Here is written, and if you are interested in participating of one of these 7 groups, please feel free and contact Ariana Keshravi. She works at ITS Mobility in Germany. So here are the partners. We are 23 altogether. And with this, I conclude my presentation. If you have questions again, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you. Björn Skoglund from SOS Alarm Sweden. We are handling the 112 emergency number in Sweden. I must point out that eCall is, I don't say mistake or failure, but it's not working very well today. 1 out of 5 automatic eCalls are real, which means 4 are not. And 1 out of 100 of the manual are real eCalls. So it's actually a strain today to the resources, the rescue resources, more than a help to people who needs help. So I don't have a question, but must point out that it's very important that you can verify that it's actually a real accident. Thanks.
Thank you for this remark. Yes. Please, on this side.
Hi, as a PSAP operator, I got also information that the car type M1, N1 doesn't mean nothing for the fire departments or the EMS staff. Is there a chance to change it and write down that it's Opel, Mercedes, or Volvo, so stuff like this?
All right. Yeah, you speak about third-party eCall, third-party service eCall. Yeah, this is public eCall. What I was speaking about. You know, this is not the commercial, let's say, commercial third-party eCall. But here there were some, let's say, work going on also in conjunction with third-party eCall, especially with the conformity schema. I can't answer about if there is, let's say, any work going on in the combination of, let's say, third-party and public eCall. I think this was the, let's say, question on your side, this combination.
I think
maybe,
right.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I can just add that the reference to M1 and N1 was to the actual category of the vehicle, what type of vehicle, not the make or model. In current eCall, you can get the make and model of the vehicle from the VIN number. There are some lookups available. EUCARIS would be the sort of most widely available lookup. And it's always been known that, you know, they couldn't include the actual make and model because makes and models change across geographies and change across countries. So it was more appropriate to include the VIN number, which can uniquely identify the vehicle from that. And that's a piece of work that all of us PSAPs have to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, and to access really this EUCARIS database for these purposes.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we've gone right on the screen there, so
time's up.
we are out of time. All I'd like to do is I'd ask you to thank both of our presenters with a round of applause, please. And